Welcome to the Unshielded podcast, where we explore the importance of rational privacy through the application of data protection and zero-knowledge technology. This special episode from Rare Evo in Las Vegas is titled Creators at the Core, How Creators Power Ecosystem Growth. Your host is Jason from the Midnight Foundation, and he is joined by Rupert from Input Output and Farid from Dapp Central. Join them as they discuss their experience in growing blockchain communities and the importance of empowering developers, thought leaders, and change makers to create projects and culture for a growing ecosystem. All right, welcome. Thanks, everybody. Jason Schober here with the Midnight Marketing Team, back at it again. We have this episode called Creators at the Core. So have a few guests here. We're going to talk a little bit about how creators help manage and power ecosystem growth across different communities. So excited to hear from a couple of veterans that have been in the crypto space for quite some time, have them explain who they work with on quite a bit and kind of the spaces that they played in. So Farid, we'll start with you. If you do a quick intro, tell us a little bit about yourself and what types of ecosystems you participated in.
Sure thing, and thank you for the opportunity, Jason.
Yeah.
My name's Farid, also known as Dapp Central. I run mainly on YouTube, do a lot of pre-recorded content, do some live streams as well, but all focusing on, developing blockchains, mainly focus on Cardano, expanding now into Bitcoin, and of course, none other than Midnight. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. And Rupert.
Hi, I'm Rupert Whitehead. I'm the developer relations lead at Input Output and focusing primarily on the Cardano ecosystem.
And yeah, and a little bit about my background as well. Obviously, have been in the Cardano Midnight ecosystem, trying to grow that out as well. Have background with Circle and growing out the USDC ecosystem from a cross-border payment and remittance standpoint in digital dollars. So primarily there as well, a lot of Ethereum participation personally. And so I think, again, we've had our experiences over the years in regards to seeing how these blockchains have grown, what we kind of expect from the types of community personalities and projects and founders on a regular basis. So I think, one of the things I kind of want to get from your point of view and your experience was personally, I found, especially with my social media background, is that content creators get a bad rap. And, Farid, as someone that does, host and create content on a YouTube channel, I feel for there are people that do it really well and understand how to participate and build into an ecosystem, and others that are kind of more on the hype and looking to kind of follow certain trends. But, personally, I think of content creators across the board. It doesn't necessarily mean they're looking at culture content creation. They're if you're a founder and you're showcasing your project and putting that, as demos on YouTube, or doing X spaces, talking about technology, speaking with other people about what they're trying to implement, I find that to be, creators as well. And anybody that's looking to put their project, their technology, their culture, their personality into an ecosystem, I feel is essential to saying that they are a creator and they're someone that is building a community around a certain ecosystem. So how, is that something similar to how you guys think about your audiences that you work with, or how do you define a creator when you're in those spaces?
I see creators in a broader context. So I think it's anyone who needs to create content to promote their vision, their idea, and their connection with an audience. Yeah. And actually, when you look at it through that lens, it's quite broad. Developers in particular often need to multi-hat. So you may be there as a developer coding something, particularly in our weird and wonderful blockchain world. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you're going to need to promote that. You're going to need to get other people to discover your project, find it, and sense make together. And this is sort of how you build a community, and you bring something that helps other people and they help you. And together you go further and faster.
I like that. What you're free. I would echo what Rupert has mentioned there. Everyone is essentially creating within an ecosystem, right? Whether you're creating videos, you're creating code, you're creating media, we're all creating to an extent. And I think for me, it's just finding the way that makes the most impact and where I can contribute. And so for me, it's been through video, but I'm also learning, this is all emerging technology. And I think that we're all trying to find our footing. And so I think people need to be forgiving of one another and just understand that, creators are taking a risk, right? And sometimes that plays in their favor, right? And sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, as long as your intentions are right, hopefully your community, whether you're a project founder, right, a video content creator, hopefully they understand your intentions.
Right. I think the part that I like as well is with these creators, because it is community, you find partners and individuals with complementary skill sets. Because like you said, if you are building a project, you also may not feel comfortable promoting yourself and that project as much as maybe you should to get it out there. So do you talk to a Dapp Central about, hey, here's what my content does? Would you be able to articulate this to your audience for me so that I could have some promotion? I think there's a nice synergy there that happens where, it can feel overwhelming if you're a founder, developer that wants to get that message out there, but doesn't have a skill set to build it and thinks they'd have to do everything. A unique thing too is obviously they may not speak as passionately or as accurately about it. But if you can talk to, someone that has an audience already established and help them understand, even if it's behind the scenes, that could advocate for somebody. And again, that's why we come to events like Rare Evo, be able to have those kind of in-depth conversations in person where it's maybe a little more transactional online and you have to keep that interest going. So I do like the fact that where, as you bring up, there should be certain things for a developer founder that might need to wear many hats, but there are other community members you could probably reach out to help kind of complement all of that together. So I really like that as what I've seen from the blockchain community. I don't know, is there anything else like you've seen kind of as projects come to you that helps you understand, like kind of bringing those to the forefront?
Yeah. Again, I think one thing that I've realized is there's a need for creators, right? And so it's a space where the demand outweighs the supply, at least for video content. There's a lot of wonderful and brilliant minds that are able to code, but some of them struggle, getting on camera, getting the message out. And so I think just being transparent and being honest, right, to be able to ask for that help, and understanding that, we all play a role in the ecosystem. And again, as a content creator or a YouTuber, that has a role. Typically it's when things have been, built and people are trying to get the word out.
Right. Okay. I think a step forward there, in my experience, with the Web3 communities and crypto communities is there are many audiences, and like compared to like maybe TradFi or corporate type of entity, even like traditional tech, you usually are maybe building one or a suite of products that are specific to an audience, but you get into a blockchain ecosystem, there are many, many audiences. And I think that's maybe a tough part when it does come to content creation specifically, but even just creating in general, like how do you focus the messaging to reach many of those audiences, or at least the mindset to understand, well, this is my audience in the community. So thinking about that, like what are your considerations when you go into content creation and the audience that maybe, given your experience, what are the ones that you think of like, I know this is my audience, this is the type of content I create? So talk about that.
Okay. I'll keep this brief to give Rupert an opportunity here.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm very technical. And the reason why I actually became a creator was because I found that there was a gap in technical content. A lot of the space is very, very difficult to understand, especially for the average person.
Right.
And so, as things are releasing, things are dropping, tech is advancing, there is a need to have content that's up to date, that's relevant. And I just found that, it was very difficult for me to find that technical content. And so it's kind of funny because I was in need. I started to dig into that. Yeah. And as a result, I learned, but then realized, well, if I'm going through this process and I'm going through this problem, somebody else might be going through that same exact situation. Well, therefore, let me record that and get that out there. And so again, for me, it's been I've naturally, because I'm a technical person, have attracted a technical crowd. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of how, I've found success.
Okay. Rupert, given your position with Cardano ecosystems and other products that you've put out there,
I think the starting point for me is segmentation, thinking really, really carefully about who your audience is.
Okay.
And that audience actually also changes a bit over time as well. So I speak to different people in slightly different ways. Some people might want a very, very simple, high-level approach, super simple language, make it easy. Other people absolutely need the details. They need the technology. They need to understand how things work and the bits and pieces. And there's a space for all of these things.
Right.
But I think, again, you've got to tie it back to the audience, the person you're trying to communicate to, and think about it from a usability perspective. Is this delivering a better experience for them and delivering on their needs? So kind of there's a meeting between what you want to say, the message you want to push out, and what your audience wants as well. So that you're always looking for a fine balance between these two to create that connection.
Yeah, I mean, I can even think just specifically around our process to Glacier Drop, where, the tokenomics paper took months and months of consideration of the detail and the specificity that goes into something like that. And there may be a small audience that is reading the entirety of that. But did you read everything?
I was like a kid in a candy.
Okay.
But look, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's idiots. That catered to me so much.
So yeah, reads my audience for that. But I think as well too, I mean, you think about the kind of infrastructure or the structure of Glacier Drop, where multiple ecosystems, folks that don't know who Midnight is, those that haven't heard, maybe if they're not Cardano based, haven't heard about the project yet, but they know, I've already been participating in these other ecosystems. How do I participate? Well, regardless of your technology, because that is a retail audience potentially, at least up front, you have a scenario there. Well, how do you make that as simple as possible? How do you show what is the differentiation maybe between that and an airdrop, which is a consideration that we had to consider? Was, people might be used to going into a claim portal and receiving their tokens right away and not having to do anything else. How do you do something here where, hey, you're eligible if you have this amount of tokens in a type of wallet on this snapshot date, but they don't get you don't redeem them until down the line. And I think just being able to clarify something, one, that's novel, and two, in a simple way that they want to participate and feel like it's easy to do so. There's a whole different amount of factors. They say understanding segmentation and then understanding, what's the language that goes into that is definitely essential. Do you have any specific, given the fact that you have mainly a developer audience, is there any other kind of considerations, knowing like, okay, I have my segmentation. Is there any types of considerations as well, as far as like whether it's troubleshooting, roadmap or anything like that, where you start to determine how am I producing certain types of content for this audience?
I think it's all about feedback, actually.
Nice. Okay.
You try, you experiment, you see what works, and you listen and see if it's actually delivering the kind of change you wanted to drive.
Yeah.
So I think, again, it's back to what's your motivation? What's the objective you're trying to achieve? And, if you're a pure content producer, it might be about, actually just growing the channel as much as possible. So you optimize for what rewards that type of behavior. If you're a founder and a builder, it might be something totally different. It might be all about, I want people, this specific audience, to know about this. They're going to adopt and use that API, and then we're going to go great guns from there.
Right. Okay. Anything else in considerations on different audiences you're considering when you make content?
I think Rupert said it very well.
Okay.
And that's the feedback.
Yeah.
I think that's very important, to listen to what your community wants. I think it's okay to also experiment, because you do get different types of feedback. But I think understanding your core audience's needs is really important.
And even, coming from a marketing background, I would say the experimentation is even more essential. Just the fact that algorithms change, platforms change, formatting change. I remember when YouTube Shorts came out and you were thinking like, okay, they're trying to get into like a TikTok realm or something along those lines, but then they really prioritized how they're feeding shorts into their platform. And that becomes then a gateway for people to come to your channels to review longer form content. And so it is interesting to be able to say like, not only experiment on topics and how to communicate those topics, but also the format of how I'm presenting that across different platforms. I think is key too. Well, cool. We've talked a decent amount. I think the one thing I also wanted to ask about is, given kind of the ecosystems you worked with, I know we both have worked in Cardano, or we all have worked in Cardano. Maybe some of the other ones we kind of dabbled in and kind of explored. Do you have an opinion on how certain people might contribute to either a mature community or even a growing community? I think about different audiences. Like obviously in a community, there's like VCs and there's enterprise partners that come into a community. They might not be ones that consume content on a regular basis, but for them, a validation of where the community is creators that come out and say, here's my product or here's my project and here's why it's working well. Here's why it's innovative and why it's contributing to community. You have retail traders that are coming in saying like, this ecosystem's thriving. They have great projects, great partnerships. The valuation of their token might be a certain area for opportunity. And then you have I think again culture creators. We talk about meme lords and different things. You have your Snacks of the world, your Huskies of the world in Cardano that have set up those types of personalities and culture creators. What is your experience of like, how do you kind of navigate those individuals and how they contribute and how that makes up a community?
I'll take a shot at this one. I would sort of break this down into two categories, right? And I find that typically, as a creator, you can go down one of two paths, and both of these I think lend to a lot of value, but you can go down the path of education, or path of entertainment, right? But then you've also got creators that like a mix of both. And on the consumption end, you've got, at least in my case, retail-based audience, right? So I'm not putting out content that's for VCs, investors, like big brands. Like these are people that I've been able to meet here at Rare Evo and shake their hands, which makes it that much more rewarding.
Yeah.
But some of them like the entertainment. They like the high, fast-paced comedy, or things that are going to have those big moments, as opposed to some that are a little bit more. What is the word? I don't even know how to describe them, but they're not necessarily looking for that big bang. They're okay sitting down and being able to just learn and process and think about something,
Yeah.
And so again, I think it's understanding like what you as a creator like to put out there.
Okay.
And it can be arranged, between that education and entertainment, and you can do both, but then understanding what your audience wants as well, like Rupert mentioned earlier.
Okay. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, developers like the detail.
Yeah. Yes.
But we still need to spend a bit of time at the top level as well to give a reason to pull them in and understand why they need to go into the detail, because we're in an economy of attention.
Yes.
And it's really, really difficult to grab attention when there's many other things that are calling for it.
Yeah.
So anything we can do to have that empathy, that connection, that will allow us to deliver the right content in the right way. And I think that means simple stories at the top that pull people in. It also means actually tapping into the power of community as well. Absolutely. When you bring something, you help other people and you pay it forward, you create this community sense, this ethos, this approach that floats everybody. And it becomes a very, very powerful mechanism to make everything go faster.
Awesome.
Okay. If I could just say something very briefly, I would just, for any aspiring creators, right, whether they're building on Midnight, Cardano, Bitcoin, would just advocate for them to be themselves. I think one of the biggest and hardest things I had to come to grips with, and I think many creators have to come to grips with, is what are people going to think about me and what I look like, what I talk, and what I sound like. But what you'll realize very quickly is that people don't care as long as you're providing genuine value. And they actually come to love you for you. So again, that was just, I think, something that I would just like to put out there for anybody that's thinking about becoming a creator. And looking to do something that, again, is at the very sort of cutting edge, especially doing it in tech.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I think, whether you've already been part of the, Cardano ecosystem and using one of the many IO products, or following Dapp Central in regards to the content Farid's been putting out, I think, it's great to see folks sharing what they're doing, what they're building, how they're participating in the community. And so I would welcome our audience to, come to Midnight, think about how you might want to be part of our community. Obviously, the Cardano ecosystem has already been onboarding and been welcome, and we're excited to have them. But if anybody else has seen this from the Rare Evo audience, feel free to go to midnight.network, check out our docs if you'd like to be more technical and understand how to start building on Midnight, or start following us at Midnight Foundation or Midnight Network and join in our community. So thanks for the time today, gentlemen. I appreciate you talking this. This was great to talk shop with you.
Thank you.
All right.